What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with a preview for the Career Builder Challenge. Very interesting tournament that we have here because it's going to be played on 3 separate courses. So I want to make sure I get this right. Very unique event. It's played in California. They're going to use, let's see, the Nicholas Tournament course, the TPC Stadium course, and La Quinta Country Club. Those are the 3 courses they're going to be playing this week. That means a couple of different things. Every player is going to play every course once. So there's a 54-hole cut, which we'll talk about in a second. And when you're looking at course history, we're kind of throwing it out the window a little bit. Not the course history so much, but when we get to our correlated stats, they're correlated for the entire tournament, which is across 3 different courses. So a little difficult to find the specific stats for the course when, you know, the host course, which is the stadium course this year, is only going to be played twice. So everyone who makes the 54-hole cut is going to be playing the stadium course. That's the host for this week. So we'll talk more about that. A little bit in general. For no-cut events and for events like this where it's a 54-hole cut, I tend to like the birdie makers a little bit more, just because, you know, you're basically guaranteed 3 rounds. Guys who the birdie or better guys are always very interesting. Those are the ones that I like in no-cut events, and this is kind of like a hybrid. So let's not waste any more time and look at this. The Career Builder Challenge has been under a few different names. It was the Humana Challenge. It was the Bob Hope Classic. Here's the cheat sheet for this week. And on the right-hand side, we've got the defending, or the past champions. Hudson Swafford's your defending champion. Duffner has won it in the past. Those last 2 years, 2017 and 2016, are the 2 most recent in which the stadium course was the host course. So keep that in mind. If we go down here at the bottom, you've got average DraftKings points. Bill Haas has obviously played here a ton. If we were to go back even further, and actually, I think some of these are even skewed because I think when Pat Perez won this, it was a 5-round event. So, I mean, he scored like 132 or 172 DraftKings points one year because it was a 5-round event and he won it. So, like, this is all over the place. So let's just talk a little bit more in depth about the players in the field. We have Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm is the clear-cut favorite. I believe this is the first time in his young career he's been the most expensive player on the slate. He's 8-1. Those are very, very healthy odds. And the next closest golfer, Brian Harman, is 15-1. That's a pretty big gap between the top 2 golfers. So Jon Rahm, odds-on favorite. Great showing at the Tournament of Champions, which was basically the last time he's teed it up since, I don't know, what was that, the WGC? That was a couple of months ago. When we get to the correlated stats, he's going to fit everything. So last week we kind of talked about starting lineups with Leishman, and maybe we were fading Thomas and Spieth at the top a little bit. This week I think we have to get one of these top 2 guys. Rahm just being the odds-on favorite, clearly the best player in the field. No surprises here. But Brian Harman, and I think Brian Harman's going to be incredibly highly owned, but for good reason, playing outside of his mind right now. You can look at those are the last 3 tournaments he played. 4th at the RSM, 3rd at the Tournament of Champions, 4th at the Sony. 8th and 5th in the rest of the swing season. So, I mean, like, unbelievable run here in this swing year. And then 3rd place last year, 11th place the year before, and those were the 2 years that this was the stadium course as the host. So Brian Harman, he's the chalk, but I'm ready to eat it up. Really good stretch here. And then I have a tweet that I saved for this exact moment from Mike McAllister at PGA Tour _Mike MC, just saying how impressive Brian Harman's first 2 rounds at the Sony Open were. That was his lowest score to par through 2 holes in his entire career. You can see the next best was last year's Career Builder. So you've got a guy who's playing outside of his mind, and the last time he played this course, he shot a career low relative to par score through the first 2 rounds. So I know that's a mouthful, but you get the point here. Harman's playing well, and he kind of picked apart this course last year. As we continue to scroll through here, I think there are a few guys worth noting, but I'm going to jump to the game logs real quick. These are the updated game logs. Bear with me here. There might be some quirks. There might be a few inconsistencies. I think I found them all, but if you see something, let me know. I just loaded in the last 10 years. Everything from 2008. So this used to only go back like a year and a half. Now it's since 2008. I had to remove the download button because it was so large. The download's so large. So I'm trying to figure out a better way to figure this out and get you guys a download. But I'm just going to click all the names of this tournament in the past. So here you go. So just to kind of show you, here's all since 2008. Everyone at the CareerBuilder Challenge. I think I mentioned Pat Perez. Yeah, when he won it in 2009, 172 DraftKings points. Now, again, I believe this was a 5-round event. So, like, if you just want to look at the last 2 years, like, yeah, they start to get a little better. It's going to be a low-scoring event. So the reason I'm showing you this is because no matter how many rounds they play, you have to make a ton of birdies here. Okay, Jason Duffner won it last year. Actually, it looks like in a playoff, I suppose, with Lingmerth. 30 birdies, 5 bogeys. Okay, so I'm looking at guys to avoid bogeys, and I'm looking at guys for birdie or better. I mean, you can see none of these guys making any more than like 5 or 6 bogeys. You just can't do it. Even pars are going to sooner or later lose you ground on the field. So when I'm looking through these game logs, those are exactly the types of things that I'm looking for. You have to go low here. Okay, as we continue to scroll through this cheat sheet, let's see who else pops out. Webb Simpson will be very popular, and I like that he is under 10,000. So you're going to have a dilemma here with Duffner and Simpson, assuming you can only pick one of them. They're $100 apart. Duffner has won this in the past, but Webb Simpson's, probably played better more recently. And down the stretch at the end of last year, Webb Simpson was really, really good. Simpson's 25-1, Duffner's 30-1. So if you're making me choose between these two, and I like them both, I really do, I will have more Webb Simpson than I do Duffner, just because the odds are a little bit better. He's playing well recently, and I think just because he's not a defending champion here, let me confirm that. Yeah, he's not a defending champion here. You kind of get that. The defending champion status gives Duffner the ownership boost, or maybe not defending, but past champion. Then you scroll down here, and Patton Kizzire, unbelievable run. He won it last week in 6 playoff holes. You know my philosophy on this, right? Like, it's very difficult for guys to win back-to-back events or anything like that. I will have some small percentage of him, but it's just a very difficult thing to do. Now, he's won twice in 4 starts for him. But that $9,100 is not nearly as appealing as his price tag last week. So I'm just going to pump the brakes on Kizzire for a second. Love him long-term, love him for the year, but you're now buying high on Kizzire. Let's look over here and see if we can find some good course history. So Bill Haas always seems to show up here. So I'm more of a recent form over course history guy, which is now the crux that Bill Haas gets you in, because he's been pretty terrible lately, right? Just in the 3 events that he's played in the last 9 weeks, he's made 1 cut and he finished 62nd. 4 really good finishes in the last 4 years here, and you have to determine, is course history more important or is recent form more important? I say recent form is. So you won't see me have too much of him. James Hahn, 2nd place win last week. To me, that is absolute noise. Let's go back to the game logs here, and we'll just look up Hahn. And let's just clear these out here. See if I can find James. James Hahn, to me, is very similar to like Siwoo Kim. Which, by the way, me saying that I didn't like Siwoo Kim last week was like the loudest response I've ever gotten from you guys about how stupid I am. So that was fun. We got to debate that for a couple of days. He finished, 62nd? So I love tooting my own horn with one sample size of Siwoo Kim, but toot, I suppose. But kind of the same thing from James Han here, where it's like he'll go 8 straight weeks and miss a cut, then he'll win. Then he'll be really crappy for 8 straight weeks, and then he'll have a high finish. Like, I'm not particularly interested in that type of player here. James Han gets 0 shares from me. And then as we continue to scroll, whoops, I guess I should scroll here. I'm trying to see if anyone really jumps out. Oh, Brian Stewart. Okay. Played really well last week, right? Finishes 4th at the Sony. Can I move this up? Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I'm screwing this up big time. Let's try this. Here's Brian Stewart. Finishes 4th at the Sony. In his last 5 weeks, he has 3 top 10s. Now, I know these aren't ridiculously good fields, but this is really good for him. And he's had a decent finish here in the past. He's missed the last 2 cuts, but a 5th place in 2014. This is the type of player I want to buy on. This is a buy low candidate as opposed to a Patton Kizzire buy high candidate. So Stewart at 60-1, those are better odds than a lot of guys up above him and a lot of his peers up here, right? So, yeah, he will be a very strong value play for me. I'll have him in a lot of lineups. I'm just trying to see if anyone else really jumps off here before we move on. Not really, right? A couple of random guys just spouting off for some high finishes, but nothing too crazy there. Okay, let's go to the stats and see what these bear out. And I think I have my correlation in here somewhere. Okay, so let's look at this and talk through these key stats for this week and whether or not they're important. So again, if you're new to this, I run a regression model which looks at every stat on the PGA Tour since 2008 and looks at the course that it's being played on and correlates it to DraftKings points. So which stats turn into higher DraftKings points. Unfortunately, this tournament is all over the map. You know, different host courses, the fact that they use a 3-course rotation makes this very difficult. So we can take a few things away from this. I don't think these stats are nearly as important this week, but the format is very unique. So these are players who have been able to overcome this type of format. So maybe that says something. So again, not putting as much stock into this as I might have in other weeks, but I think it's worth talking about. The 5 stats that popped up as the most relevant for this tournament are strokes gained total, approaches from 175 to 200 yards, birdie or better, no surprise there, putting average, and scoring average. Okay, so no surprise on birdie or better, no surprise on scoring average. Strokes gained, of course, that's probably going to pop up a lot, putting average. But the one that is kind of course relevant or tournament relevant might be that approaches from 175 to 200. So let's see if we can do this here. Strokes gained total. Let's just take a peek, see. Whoops, wrong way. Jon Rahm, and this is why I like Jon Rahm, far and away ahead of the rest of the field. You know, nearly a stroke better. You know, 7/10 of a stroke better than Kevin Kisner, who's second in this field. But with that being said, Stuart Sink, who had a very strong week last week, continues to pop up here. Okay. Let's skip approaches from 175 to 200. We'll come back to that. Birdie or better. Again, it's going to go low first. I got to fix that. Jon Rahm, number 1. Okay. Luke List always pops up on these lists. I'm tired of Luke List. Always pops up on these lists. Again, Stuart Sink. That's interesting. $7,300. Okay. Putting average, no surprise. We're going to see some pretty good putters here. There's my boy Brian Harman. You know he's not a long hitter, so he better get it done with the flat stick, and he does. Phil Mickelson pops up. So now Phil has been up here a couple of times on these metrics, right? We've seen his name twice, I believe. Pretty weak field for Phil. And then scoring average, again, Jon Rahm leads the field. So essentially, you know, it's no surprise he's the most expensive golfer. but he's not far and away the most expensive golfer, right? There's 3 guys over 11,000. There's 5 guys over 10,000, I believe, which is kind of an indictment on the DraftKings scoring. They just kind of like cascade down the pricing based on odds. So I think Jon Rahm is clearly the number 1 player in this field, but I don't think he is priced like clearly the number 1 player in the field. And I know that they can't always do that, but I think you're actually getting a pretty decent value if you're buying the most expensive player, because I think it's far and away that he's the best golfer. Again, Sink, Reavie, Phil. A lot of the same names popping up here, right? These might be some of your cornerstone guys that you want to play. And then approaches from 75 to 200. Now, this is proximity. So the smaller the number, the better. So that means, you know, your average approach from 175 to 200 yards is 28 feet. Or, yeah, 28 and a half feet. That's what this is. So lower numbers are better here. Again, Rahm is a top 6 golfer. Any values here? I mean, none of these guys popped up any other places, which means, you know, you don't really want to get too involved in that. Swafford did pop up a couple of places, and he is the defending champion. Anyone else here? Steele was on here a couple times. He's had really good course history here as well, right? Can we go back and look at Steele? How much was he? Sorry for flipping back and forth. 8,900. I'm not a big fan of Brendan Steele, but you can see a dead last in the TOC. No, he was like 5th from the bottom. But here's his course history, right? A sixth place, and a 2nd place. He's probably a little too expensive for a flyer for me, and you know I'm a big Ches Reavie, Austin Cook fan. But if you wanted to be a bit of a contrarian, I bet you could get a pretty good ownership on Brendan Steele. And then just before we wrap up, like we always do, let's just take a glance at the odds and see if there's any glaring pricing discrepancies. So I'll continue to update these throughout the week, by the way. Bud Cauley at 30 to 1, same price as Steele for $500 more. Here's a couple guys that seem underpriced. Snedeker and Chappell both at 40 to 1. That's the same price as Chesson Hadley, who's $9,000. Okay, so I think Snedeker was on a couple of those key stats as well. He might be someone you might be interested in. Duffner, unfortunately, that would say Duffner's overpriced. And I like Duffner. I like Duffner this week, but when we go through this exercise, he would be overpriced compared to his peers. That's probably it. Where was Stewart? Oh yeah, here we go. So 60 to 1, $7,500. That's a pretty good deal considering there's a couple guys in this range that are a couple $100 more, or guys at 50 to 1 that are more expensive. So those are the guys I'm probably going to be going with. That's it for this week. Give me a shout. Let me know who you're interested in playing. If you find any other discrepancies, I'll continue to update this throughout the week. Tweet me, it's at DFS On Demand, or leave a comment below. Talk to you guys soon. See ya.